Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thanks for showing up. Today's episode is called, Are You Feeling Stuck in Your Career? Career is another one of those primary foods I keep mentioning. Are you an overachiever who's feeling stuck in your career? Maybe you're looking for more fulfillment. In today's episode, I'll be talking to my guest, Alice Yeh. She's a certified career clarity coach who helps high achievers feeling stuck in unsatisfying careers transform their Sunday scaries into fulfilling Mondays. With an Ivy League background and 14 years of climbing the corporate ladder on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley, Alice knows what it's like to feel unfulfilled despite checking all the right boxes. Now, Alice's mission is to help you find not just a job, but an exciting life filled with his success, passion, and purpose, so you too can escape the hamster wheel and find joy in your work. Remember to like and share this podcast. This podcast is for you if you know you want to change something, whether that's your career, your health, or another aspect in any age and stage in your life, and you don't know what to do or how to do it. Or you may be that person who is afraid to take that first step caught in analysis paralysis. I see and understand you. I used to feel the same way. Now let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Alice Yeh. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Susie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you too. Thank you for being on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm excited to have this chat with you today. And if you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm a career clarity coach. I help high-achieving mid-career professionals who essentially are feeling stuck at career crossroads and want to transition or turn their Sunday scaries into fulfilling Mondays so that they can find live the life that they want to live in terms of purpose and having passion and for their life.
Yeah. So, when we spoke initially about being on this podcast, you had some experience with this yourself. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So from my own personal career, I've spent a lot of it, especially my corporate career, in terms of following the path that is told to you by your parents, by society, where get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job at a stable company, and then you're set. That's how you'll find success. And yeah, I spent most of my life doing that, checking the right boxes. And for me, I went from Wall Street to business school to working in big tech at Google and then startups. And even though I did all of that, and on paper I looked very successful, a little bit of an overachiever, but something always felt missing. And it wasn't until I started working with a coach of my own early last year, where by working with her, I was struggling with this uncertainty in terms of figuring out what to do next, because I felt like I had tried everything you were supposed to do, but I still felt like something was missing, and I didn't know what to do next. And that's how I decided to focus on coaching, because throughout my entire corporate career, the common thread of what I really enjoyed and my strengths were around building relationships with people and coaching and mentoring others, especially around careers. So that's how I started to think about focusing on coaching as my next path. And I live in San Francisco, so being in the Bay Area, there's a lot of interest and focus around starting your own company. And I had always had this limiting belief where I thought in order to start a company, you had to have this brand new, innovative, never been thought of before idea. And working with my coach, she challenged that assumption, and helped me realize that you don't necessarily need to have a brilliant new idea that's never been thought of before in order to start your own company. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. So with that in mind, that's how I decided to become a career coach. And what originally started out, or the intention was to start it as a side hustle. And as soon as I started my coaching certification program, a couple weeks later, I got laid off. And so I took that as a sign from the universe to go all in on this journey.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be a sign. I would listen to that too. So, as I hear you, it sounds like this uncertainty and what to do next is probably a common theme and something you see often with the people you work with. Is that correct? Or
Yes, that's right. Especially for, I think, people who are high achievers or overachievers like I was, where you look very successful on paper. You have this very well paid, high performing job, but you still feel like something is missing. And to me, that is a sign that you probably are missing purpose and this feeling of having, like you're making an impact with the work that you do. So knowing that your work, finding your work meaningful. And I think a lot of times people often miss that because they're just following a path that's been laid out from them, whether it's by their parents or society or just following the herd.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, you do get going on that path and you don't think you're in the process of doing and not just stepping back from it until it's come at a point where it's either cost you your health or maybe a marriage or all those things. And you're just going, why am I doing this anymore?
Yes,
And
definitely.
I've been down there. I've burnt out on my career, and I used a coach to help me as well, just to get refocused. And so what you're saying is very similar about finding your strengths and what you're passionate about and things like that. And it really helped to get clarity. And I would think that people would feel that because they probably haven't had the time or energy or the space
Yes, definitely.
to go through that process.
Yes. And that's part of the process that I work with my clients on in terms of figuring out, like you said, what are your strengths? What are your passions and interests? Where do you want to, have you felt like you've made an impact, where the work you've done is meaningful? And it doesn't have to be, always in career. Sometimes the things that we do outside of work brings meaning into your life. And yeah, the intersection of all of that is where people can start to think about focusing in order to figure out what purpose means to them.
Mm-hmm. So part of my health coaching training was talking about primary foods and all those things besides diet and exercise that contribute to our overall health. And one of them is career. So I was glad to bring you on to talk about that because it's such an important part of our identity. And something, even when we walk away from a career we've known for a long time, there's that sense of loss, almost that we're grieving the ending of that part of ourselves. And I wonder if people talk about that who are working with you.
Yeah, it's a common thing I see for sure. Especially, now where a lot of people have gone through layoffs and where that change is forced on you rather than you choosing that change. And for those who aren't necessarily going through a layoff but are afraid to make a change, the common fear I often hear is that fear of uncertainty. And part of that is also, especially for high achievers or overachievers that have really consistently experience success, they're afraid, that fear of starting over and feeling like, oh, I've achieved so much success. Everything I've worked on up until now is I have to start over, or everything I've done is going to be a waste. And oftentimes I work with with my clients to help them see that it's not a waste. You're not starting over. Everything you've learned up until now is something that you can work off of and build on as you think about your next step. And so that fear around the uncertainty and fear of starting over, it also is really a big part of that fear of failure, essentially, and feeling like, you don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. And so part of that is helping them see that actually failure can be seen as a step to success, because it's a learning opportunity. And so, yeah, that's definitely something I see and work with clients on, is around this whole mindset. Yeah.
Well, it is a mindset, and we've been groomed to be that way. And I definitely was listening and hearing fear of failure before you said that, because that isn't something people want. But sometimes you have to try something and learn that you don't want to do that to lead you to another place. And for me, when I was mentoring employees, and as I talk to other people too, I'm a big believer that one thing leads to another, and that skills are transferable, and you can carry these things forward in whatever you do next.
Yes, definitely. 100% agree. Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention is, when you were talking about for your health coaching, that career is a big part of it. I just want to stress that, often I think people often underestimate how much career plays in your day-to-day life, because you spend at least 8 hours of your day at work, which is 1/3 of your day. And even if you're not actively, working overtime, you do bring a lot of whatever you're feeling and experiencing from work into your personal life. And so making sure that, if you're happy and satisfied in your career, that can then lead to better health habits or more time with family, understanding where your priorities are, that, it's all interrelated.
It is all interrelated, and you come home, and if you're with someone, you talk about your day, and if you're always talking about how bad it is or how much you don't like it or whatever, it tends to affect that relationship. Not like it sours it, but it plays on it. Plus, it plays on your own body and your system. And when trying to sleep, when you're probably trying to process, what you're feeling right now. And so there's a lot to be said for that. And I admire you for, one, seeing that there's a need for this, and two, you yourself have been through that, so you know what it's like. And it comes at a good time for people to start reflecting and saying, okay, I've got this many years left. Is this where I want to be in my career? I would think, I don't know where you get people, whether they're at the point of no return or, like you said, they've been laid off. But there's at some point where they say, I need to reach out to someone, and that person is Alice.
Yes, and that's hopefully where I'm catching people, is where they feel like they've exhausted all their options, or they're really just at this point of uncertainty, of really unsure of what to do next. And I've been there myself. I know how it feels. And I want to help people move forward and be happy in their careers.
Sure. It makes a huge difference. Can you give me, Alice, a few examples of success stories you've had with your clients? Well, you don't have to name names, obviously.
Yes, of course. So one of my clients, she came to me where she had been laid off. So her role was very high performing, high stress. She told me she had been working 80 hours a week. And when she got laid off, it was like what you said, there was a bit of a loss of identity and she wasn't sure what she wanted to do next. Obviously she was quite burnt out and she felt like she needed to do a job search because that's what you're supposed to do. But everything she looked at in terms of roles didn't look interesting. She was tired of doing the same thing that she was doing for most of her career. And through that, we really explored the three main areas. So her purpose. So going back to what I mentioned before, thinking about what her interests were, where her strengths were, and where she has felt like she made impact, and what drives her. And so for her, she was had many passions, multi-passionate, and she always felt like she couldn't combine everything or find a way to leverage all of that because her interests were so varied and at the surface level didn't seem to have necessarily a connection with one another. But as we dug deeper, we found that there was a common theme across all of her interests. And that's where she realized that to her, she really liked being able to build something and really contribute to that process. And then the second area is really around alignment. So understanding what your core values are and really understanding what motivates you and drives you and making sure that what you prioritize is what is aligned with your next opportunity. And so she was then able to identify what was missing in her past role, or past roles, in general. And so she had a better understanding of what she needed to look for going forward in the future. And the last area was around the mindset. And so whenever we talked about potential opportunities, things were a little bit outside the box, we can say, of what she was known, what you're used to in terms of like thinking about a traditional career. Her immediate responses were always, well, I can't do this because of X, Y, Z. She would very easily come up with 10 reasons why she couldn't do something. And I helped her see or think about, well, sure, you have these 10 reasons, but there's a reason why you're thinking of these opportunities. There's an underlying pattern of what is interesting about it to you. So digging into that and helping her see that it's not necessarily why she couldn't, but thinking about why those are attractive to her in the first place, and helping her see that, turning those negative initial thoughts into thinking about possibilities. And that was very eye-opening for her to think about, the endless possibilities that are actually out there. And now she's actually taken all of the things that we've worked on together to start her own business and really dig in and lean on her strengths and passions, in order to work on all of that. So.
That's a great story. And it sounds like she needed to also maybe retrain what was rolling around in her head, what she kept thinking about, because I think that's part of the joy of being a coach, is being able to pull that out and kind of reflect that back to see if, is that really how you feel about yourself, or is that really true?
Exactly. Yep.
When you're dealing with high achievers who, are probably pretty driven and either mission driven or driven by whatever money or whatever it is. Well, that's a great story. So, do you focus in on females only, or men, or does it matter to you who you work with?
It doesn't matter to me. I think, what has naturally happened is most of my clients are women. And generally in the millennial age range, where I think a lot of people, in this age range are experiencing a lot of changes in our life, starting families. And I think with the pandemic, that helped accelerate the things and questions around what am I actually really doing with my career? And so I think all of that has really, those are kind of the general, I guess, yeah, what most of my clients look like.
You back during the pandemic, and that's interesting you should say that. There was so much conversation about people saying, well, I don't want to do what my parents did, that my parents were in one job until either they retired or died or got laid off themselves. So they don't put themselves in a position that they're going to be at one job. And so they move around a little bit. Are you seeing that with some of the people that you've worked with, that they've had a variation, or have they stayed pretty steady Eddie in one employer or one career?
I think the trend is to move around. I think fewer people are staying in one job for their entire career. Especially I think just with the way businesses are, and recently with with a lot of layoffs, not only during COVID, but also if you're in the tech space or even now with, I don't know if we would call it a recession, but there's been a lot of layoffs recently as well. So I think people are realizing that that old myth around staying in one company forever is not necessarily a reality. And it is, I think, good to move around, especially if what you are working on or the company no longer matches what you want. And I think that's okay, because we change as people through life, and your desires change. Your definition of success changes. So as you move through these changes, it's natural that you would want to seek places that match that as you change. And so oftentimes I think people don't realize that you can outgrow the company and the role that you're at. But you stay there because you feel some sort of loyalty or this fear of making a change, because this is all you've known. And so part of what I like to do is working with clients to help them realize that change is okay, and you should probably consider it if things are no longer matching what you need.
Well, and it's like cleaning out a closet or starting a new chapter in your life. But I like the closet because we periodically need to go in and purge and get rid of things that aren't working for us anymore, that don't fit. and we're different people, whether it's we change sizes or we just go that was a phase and I don't want to do that anymore.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that certainly has shifted over the years, because my generation, it was stay in the same job until you die. Or till you retire, more importantly.
Yes.
So, what's your SOS? If people are listening to you today who are feeling stuck or feeling, that they're just not fulfilled, what are one or two things that they can do right away, besides contact you, of course, but what can they do to help move their situation forward?
Yeah, I would say really explore what your definition, or understand what your definition of success is. I think oftentimes we've been told what is successful, but what does that actually really mean to you? And oftentimes we mistake, or we take what our parents have told us or what society has told us as this is what you need to do to be successful. And as you mentioned, like from previous generations, you've been told that you need to stay in this one job forever to, and that's how you'll find success. But now there's many ways to find success, and that is different for every person. Because in order to know where you want to go, you need to know what you're reaching for. And so that would say that's the first step. And the second step is to really understand your values or your priorities. And so not only your core values, but also what's important to you from a career perspective. So I like to call it your career core values. There's a few different areas to think about when it comes to your career. There's obviously the salary, your compensation benefits. That aspect is important, but it's not the only thing, and that's often what most people focus on is your salary and your title and that promotion. But there's all these other things that are just as important. So is the work you do interesting or meaningful? What does the team around you look like? Do you have the support that you need, the resources? Do you have a good supportive manager? What does the company culture look like? Are there growth opportunities? And so all of these different areas are also just as important, but how important each of these are is going to be different for some people. I forgot one of the most important ones, work-life balance. Is there one, or do you not care as much? And so that will be different for every person. And I actually have a resource that I've created. I call it a career checkup guide. So listeners can actually download it at bit.ly/SOS career check. And it's essentially a guide to kind of help you look at each of these different areas for your career and assess what is actually really important to you, how you would prioritize. For some people, work-life balance is the most important thing, and they're willing to sacrifice, money for that. For others, money is the most important factor. And so understanding what is a priority for you can really help you assess if your current role is aligned with what is actually important to you. And so I think those are two important steps to really understand where you are in your career path, to help you understand, is your definition of success something you're working towards, as well as what your priorities are when it comes to your career, and does that match where you currently are as well?
I love that. And in fact, as I was listening to you, I was recalling a nonprofit I worked for, and I was handed this piece of paper, which was your point number 2 about the values. And they asked every employee to rank from 1 to 7, 1 being what's the most important, to 7 being the least important, on all those factors. And they were probably all of them that you rattled on and shared with us, because, for what, one person who is a millennial shared with me her list. And it was a lot different. I assumed it was compensation at that stage in her life, and actually it was work-life balance. And so I was fascinated to see how different it was between people. We all have our own DNA, so we all what works for one and what one person likes might not be the same thing, and that's great. But we passed those back to our bosses, and that was just a really good exercise. And I was so pleased that they had enough thought to ask our opinion on what was important to us.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think as a manager, it's good to understand what is motivating your employees or your team members, and hopefully you're aware of that as you work with them and help them grow.
Absolutely. Alice, is there any question you wish that I'd asked, or anything else you'd like to impart on our listeners?
Not any particular question, but I think I just want to stress that, I think people stay in jobs they don't like for too long because they're afraid of the unknown. So they end up settling. And what I've seen is oftentimes that for people in these situations, they've played a bit of a passive role in their career where things just happened to them, or they took the easy path just because that was available. And so I think I just want to share that for people is to reconsider that and acknowledge that, think about what you actually want, and take back control of your career. And what I like to tell my clients is that think of yourself as the CEO of your career. You need to be the one to make decisions and not wait for things to come to you. So being proactive and making the changes you want yourself, rather than, waiting for a layoff to happen where that change is forced on you, or doing nothing and taking no action, and just complaining about your job to your friends and family who are probably tired of hearing about it. So taking that control back and really thinking about what you want, and stop settling and playing it safe.
Yeah, that's great advice. And sometimes we need to hear that. We need to hear it from someone besides a family member or friend.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so great. So Alice, where can people find you?
Yeah, if anything I've talked about today resonates with them and they want to learn more about me, my website is AliceYeaCoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and as Alice Ye, or Instagram at Hey Alice Ye. So find me on all of these platforms.
Awesome. Well, Alice, it's been a pleasure talking to you today about your business as a career coach and how you can help people get unstuck and find more fulfillment in their careers and ultimately in their life and their health too, Yes. So I'm so grateful for our time together, and, I hope our paths cross again, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me, Susie. I had a great time and love discussing and sharing my advice and knowledge.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, sadly, friends, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. Today's episode was a summary of how our careers affect our health and how we can get unstuck by utilizing someone like Alice, who has been there before, and she can help you. A quick reminder on how you can support this podcast: like and share, send me a review or any questions you might have, and your question may be featured on an upcoming episode. Follow me on Instagram, and if you'd like to be added to my weekly email newsletter, send me your email address. I'm happy to include you. And reach out if you're interested in finding out more about coaching and breathwork sessions. Until next time, take care and see you soon.